Hello and welcome again, everyone, to Unit Corner Club Live. With me today, as always, is my co-host, Kizza GT, and we are joined by he deserves absolutely no introduction, Don the Pleb of Plebeian Media. How are you, my friend?
Not too bad. I don't know if I've reached peak stardom that I don't need an introduction yet. But maybe,
Well,
I guess.
I don't know. You're awesome to me. I've known you for a long time from the Unpopular Opinions cluster. I've been following you this year. I've always thought that what you have to say is really cool. I like the cut of your jib. I had military family. I'm from the South in America. Some of my family are immigrants back during the earlier part of the 1900s from the Soviet Union, but for the most part, I'm completely American, going back many generations. And I just really like the cut of your jib, what you have to say. You seem to care about the West. You seem to care about our people, care about America. And I just always like the cut of your jib. So I'm glad to have you on today. Whenever I have on an esteemed guest, what I like to do is introduce that guest by however they want to talk, how they want to frame who they are and what they do. So for the first little bit of the show, how about you just let my viewers and people that are new here know what you're all about and what you've been up to the last year or so?
Well, I don't even know if it's the last year, though. I guess we are headed sort of the direction of a year. I spend almost all of my time trying to get the right wing to do anything other than look at leftists and say, but you're mistaken, sir," because that seems to be where we're at most of the time. In fact, this morning, I was opining for an hour and a half about how we need to stop treating this as a conversation because the left treats it like a war, and we should too. Turnabout is fair play. The golden rule says treat others the way you want to be treated, not treat others like garbage, and then they'll treat you kindly. And I think we need to stop pretending like we're suddenly going to go to the radical left and go, now that I've owned you with facts and logic, you're on my side, correct? Because that never works.
Right.
One of my favorite turning points for even me on that subject is a couple of years ago now. Ted Cruz had a debate with Bernie Sanders about socialized medicine, amongst other things, but primarily socialized medicine. And Bernie Sanders didn't say anything of value the entire time. He just, healthcare is a human right. And Ted Cruz would be like, we can't afford it. There's no way to pay for it. Healthcare that's a human right in other countries is terrible. This is not a good thing. Please stop pretending like it is. All of these facts, statistics, to which Bernie Sanders would take a step back from the mic, pull on his suit a little bit, look real serious and go, we shouldn't have people dying of treatable diseases in the United States. And, the crowd went wild. And I was like,
Yep.
He just told you you're going to anyway. There's nothing you can do about it. And what you're doing has very serious negative consequences. And that is a huge example of us treating it like a conversation, right? Because we do. We act like if we go over there and we tell them things that they'll suddenly figure out how wrong they are. Well, either they already know that they're wrong or they can't be convinced. And at this point, I'm fairly certain they already know and don't care. And we need to stop pretending like that's not the case.
And so with your work that you've been doing, I know that you have at least 3 or 4 live streams a week where you take an hour or two each day. You go through some news that are related to the things that you care about, that you think people need to know about, and you share your wisdom as you go. Anything else that you do with your time or your work? Are you involved in any kind of activism or clubs or anything you want to share?
So I am not involved in any particular clubs or anything. I get asked this a lot, and I really do wish I had somewhere to direct people where you could go and, I don't know, at a nationwide scale, if you checked into this organization, you could reasonably find people who weren't a bunch of progressives that were just garbage. But everywhere,
it seems we don't have any of those anymore.
Yeah. Everywhere I've ever gone is like, this is amazing. This is great. You go to 4-wheeling clubs and you're the number of people that you find is better than everywhere else. It certainly is. You're going to get 1 out of 3, 1 out of 4 kind of people who are not just radical leftists, but even then you still end up with putting up with a lot of whiny leftist douchebaggery. And
And even worse than that, conservatives that always kowtow to them.
and that's the thing, right? But and again, I say this a lot. I don't know how much I blame these people, right? Because if you go, I don't know, wherever it is that you go, whatever hobby it is that you have, you go to the you meet a friend at work, and that friend says, "Yeah, man, we get together and we do some woodworking on the weekend." And you're like, "Yeah, I like woodworking. That's cool. It's working with your hands. It's some good stuff." You go down there, you do some woodworking, and then my favorite pincushion for the left of the black transgender wheelchair bound astral thingy shows up, with a beard and triple F jugs and is like, "You need to understand that I am the peak of humanity." And you're like, "Have you considered that?" Like, no. And then your friend goes back to work and is like, "Oh my God, my friend is transphobic and I didn't know." And then you get fired.
Yeah, it sucks, and that's one of the reasons that I left the West. I lived down near the West Coast for about a decade, and I'm very thankful to be back in the so-called boonies, because moving back here to the middle of nowhere and the foothills of the Appalachian Mountains, it's like going back in time 50 or 60 years in a good way. You've got mostly people, and again, it's not just about race, but most of the people here are white. But more than anything, most of the people here, they don't tolerate progressivism in a social way. It's like if somebody wants to, have tattoos all over their face and have a big blue mohawk and be counterculture, nobody really gives them grief, but nobody really acts like that's an okay, acceptable thing. You know what I mean? Like,
Well,
it's
this
being
is the
counterculture is still treated that way out here.
this is the thing, right? So when I was a kid, and I grew up in California, and so it's worth noting that for the rest of this story. When I was a
Okay.
kid, if you had a 3-foot tall, multicolored mohawk, 71 face piercings, and a tattoo of a penis on your face, you would walk into a job and say, "Hey, I want to work here," and the person behind the counter would A, laugh, and then B, tell you the hell out, right?
Yeah.
Like, you can't be serious. I can't employ you. People here talk to the public, and you look like you. That's not a thing.
And you look like a chemical toilet from some type of heavy metal concert. You can't work here.
Yes, right. Is the Bolt factory, porta john tipped over, and you fell out. So no, and then we started all of this. Oh well, you have to hire these people. You can't discriminate based on any. And the reality is that has a lot of follow-on effects. One, people start to normalize the idea that people look like that and behave in the ridiculous ways that lots of those people behave. I don't get me wrong. I was a kid at some point. I didn't have a mohawk, but I had long hair and I dressed like a moron. And
well, hey, I mean, a lot of us have done things we're not proud of. I've done a lot of things I'm not proud of. I've been involved in stuff that now I know was anti-Western, anti-American, anti-white, anti-male. When you're young, you care. You're lied to by the establishment. You're lied to by Hollywood and the media. You think you know stuff that you don't know because all you know is lies. And so, I've never been like a, let's go burn down an abortion clinic type of lunatic. I've never been like that. But like a lot of us, myself included, used to think things that are just straight up not true because of how we've been lied to by certain things, especially by progressives in establishments like education. And thankfully, I saw through some of that when I first went to college, because when you have Eastern European family that escaped the Soviet Union, you kind of grow up Yuri-pilled. You know what I mean? Like they don't have very kind things to say about the Soviet Union. Mm-mm. So I was already hip to the Marxist game when I went to school. But that's America itself is full of is no stranger to its own lies of subversion and propaganda that it pushes on its public. And I know you're well aware of all those things. I've heard you talk about them.
Well, that is an almost new phenomenon. I mean, in the world of Age of Country, it's a relatively new phenomenon. For most people who are alive, it's been their whole life. It's not new. It's a thing that they've grown up with. Howard Zinn's History of America has been the guiding principle of American history since the 70s or something like that. Mm-hmm. And Howard Zinn's History of America is history as told from the victim of whatever happened in history. So the loser's perspective, right? Regardless of whether or not they were the victim, though that's how he frames it, right? So if some group of people and their 50 friends went out and were burning villages to the ground, but the end result of that is the town put together a gang of horse riding riflemen and went, you know what, enough is enough, stop burning down the damn town. Well, then the people who were attacking the town were the victims, right? And those are the people whose story needs to be told. And in a shocking turn of events, those same people don't come out and be like, yeah, so we've been burning down towns for years, and it turns out that if you do that, people eventually shoot you. So it kind of makes sense. That never happens, right?
Or they want to fly planes into buildings or something like that.
And again, right? There's always an excuse. There's always, any number of things. It's we were just doing our own thing, and the U.S. came over and gave us weapons to fight the Russians, but then didn't build schools, so we hate them. Freaking what?
Yeah, there's... So I didn't want to be I didn't want Dawn to be the only one on camera. So as you can see, I have my camera on now, which normally I don't do for the Corner Club because I like to sit comfy in my chair bed with my drinks and my vapes and everything because I have to monitor a bunch of tabs. But Don has such an iconic look with his flag and duress behind him. And for a lot of people, especially my non-American viewers, you might not know this, but traditionally you fly the American flag upside down when you're experiencing duress. Do you know where that comes from? Because I got told that when I was young. How far back does that go, Don? Do you know?
That is, as far as I know, Revolutionary War. So, I mean, imagine a time where there's no radios, there's no phones, no nothing. If you have no capability to get a message out of any variety, but you have some sort of American installation, and hopefully somebody of your military goes marching by and goes, wait a minute, that flag's upside down. Then they come running, right? Because
then they can at least tell somebody. Okay, my glasses makes my hair look even worse. I look terrible today.
But right. I mean, that's the idea. And it's as old as the flag in fact, it's older than this flag, right? So.
Yeah. Well, speaking of your flag and your backdrop, with your show, did I sum up pretty much what your show is about, or is there more you'd like to tell people about your message and what you stand for before we get into particulars today?
So I spend a lot of time on tactical things, and some of them I know are not things that everybody is interested in, which unto itself is probably a thing I need to make a tactics video about. But there are a lot of... Probably the biggest question I ever get is like, okay, Don, I'm sold on the idea. We have to go fight the left. We have to stop them from doing all of this destruction of everything that matters in the world. We need more people. Okay, how do we get them? And that is not a thing that anybody talks about, right? So if you go watch mainstream, even vaguely right-wing shows, they're like, well, we're going to own the left if you come down and watch my show. And yes, that intentionally sounds like nasally Ben Shapiro because that's exactly what he does, right? Like, okay, Ben Shapiro got 8 billion views. What owning the left was done? How much? How much ground was taken? And this is a lot of the problem because there's no real output from any of this. And I get accused a lot of not having an end game or anything like that because I say things like, well, if you're to the right of Mao, then we all need to get together and just stop these people. Because while I have my own opinions, while I have my thoughts on what the country should look like after we don't have progressives burning down the country, maybe we stop that, then we argue about what it looks like.
That's what led me to the whole libertarian to alt-right pipeline people joke about. Is several years ago I realized I had always I had educated people in my family. It's as abusive as some of them were, at least they educated me about my history and the country and stuff. And going all the way back to classic English liberalism and Thomas Swift and all this other stuff, like I embrace the concept that the Western way, especially the Anglo way, has been one of sort of, if you want to use the grid, the political compass, the Anglo world is kind of libertarian right. That's kind of where we have come from. And that's sort of where I came from. I like the concept of every man being able to pursue the religion and the destiny and the business he wants to lead a family and raise children the way he wants. I think that's good. That feels ethically right to me. And it seems like if you want that, you have to, first of all, not live with progressives. And you can't have communism. because then all of the things that the West was built on go out the window. And the more I started realizing that, go ahead. What?
You can live with progressives. They just have to be a minority, right?
Well, that's what I mean. You can't live under progressives is the way I should have said that.
Definitely, right? When they're making the rules, they're a problem. But you know, for the vast majority of the accusation against conservatives, oh, you just want 1950s America back. Well, progressives did exist in 1950s America, just nobody cared, right? And we looked at them and went, you people, you're idiots, you know, and then left it alone. And then we surrendered the schools to them. And that was basically the end of it. You know, and you get stuff for those, I don't know, late 30s to 40. You used to hear stuff, and I heard it when I was a kid and maybe a little bit older as well. And you'd hear stuff like, yeah, you're going to learn all this stuff in school, but then you'll get a job and you'll find out how the real world works. And this was a thing that absolutely drove me nuts with the intellectual dark web types, because they were like, oh, we told you this was going to bleed out into the real world. And I was like, well, my parents told me that.
Yeah.
It's gonna push out into the rest of the world eventually. And hell, I asked, it's 7 years old. You know, hey, well, if they're teaching this to everybody, isn't it eventually going to become part of the real world? And the answers back then were things like, well, maybe, but it hasn't been so far. So hopefully it's not that big of a deal.
Well, I think McCarthy would disagree.
Well, even McCarthy, right? If you go back and look at what McCarthy actually did, he didn't really do anything. We lionize McCarthy in the anti-communist right, and we're like, yeah, we need to go get back to McCarthy. And I'm like,
but he wasn't really that effective. He didn't get much done.
Well, even then, right? He held a few meetings about, you know, communists are a problem, and that was too much, right? Oh, yeah. But John, there were Hollywood blacklists. Well, first of all, Hollywood created the Hollywood blacklist. McCarthy couldn't do anything about it if he wanted to, and furthermore, this is the kind of virtue signal that we see every day, where people are like, you know, what we need to do is we need to have a discussion about having a discussion about a discussion about what we should do maybe someday in 2041. Like, well, okay. What do we do between now and 2041? Because that's like, at the point that every major city in America is on fire, it seems like we might need a shorter term plan than that. I don't know.
That's what led me to doing what I'm doing on my channel. Is I realized that there were so many people who cared, like you care, like I care, like a lot of the people that we know that are active care about saving the West or saving their countries or whatever. And we are all just in our own little holes and nobody really communicates. And if we all just hide in our holes or our own little groups and we don't have any unity, then we're eventually going to get steamrolled by the progressives who do have unity, who are going to unify, who are going to use the institutions of military against us eventually. They're already dominating in the spheres of media and education and all this other crap, and they practically dominate our government now too. So
the military is probably not getting used on American soil.
I highly doubt that. I'm just saying, in eventuality, if we eventually lose the ability to fight the psychological war with words, then, I mean, we're already at the point to where you lose your job, you lose your right to have a bank account in some cases, and we're seeing authoritarian measures because of the lockdown and the what I call the NWO stuff. Like, we're already seeing the authoritarian creep of invasive government stuff like they have in China being implemented in the UK, some being implemented in the EU, being implemented in Australia. And I know that things are different in America, but it's that same sort of globalist nanny state force that I think is going to go ahead.
Do you know things are different in America? I mean,
oh, well, I mean, it seems a little different where I live, but I know in a lot of the cities it's probably just as bad, if not worse. But where I'm going with all this is I feel like that just talk and just hiding in a bunker or just, you know, prepping or whatever is not an answer. And I've been looking for people who do have answers. And that's what led me to the Jason Kuna, the no white guilt guy, is he believes that one of the linchpin, now I agree with him on this, that the linchpin of crippling Americans and breaking their ability to have a voice, or white people in general, but in America, is this onus of white guilt, where people that are the host population in the UK, anywhere in a Western country that's predominantly made by white folks, we have been instilled by these these anti-white progressives with this Achilles heel of white guilt, where we feel like we need to prostrate ourselves because, our ancestors were these evil villains and they were oppressors, so we have to make up for that sin. And I think that is one of the primary spiritual flaws that we have as a people now. What do you think about that?
So you're downstream from I guess I should come up with a term for this. Then I can coin it on my own and go argue about the cathedral, but my own word.
Yeah.
But you're downstream from the plan, I guess, is the way to put it, right?
You're talking about the whole NWO, let's break the spine of independent business and people's ability to have national sovereignty so we can control everything. Is that what you're talking about?
Well, even that is downstream from the plan, right? So,
okay. Tell me about the plan.
If you go back and you read, and people like to argue with me about what we should call this brand of Marxism, liberalism. We need to get to the exact correct name, and I don't care about the name. Call it whatever you want.
Call enemy. The right. Enemy, we'll call it that, right?
call it the morons that think they're correct. I really don't care. We're all eventually talking about the same thing, right?
Yes.
And this is the thing that kills me, because everybody, it was going on in my chat this morning. This isn't a war by left and right. It's not about progressives. It's not about blah. It's a war on men.
Yeah, I saw that earlier. Yeah, and I was like, and then you saw my response was, it's against men because men were the backbone of what we have and they want to destroy what we have. And that's why I say that our enemies are basically anti-white, anti-male, anti-Christian, and anti-liberty. That's pretty much what they want to strip away and attack, because that's what makes us strong.
Well, in that sense, that's only true in any given geographic area, right? So if you go to the United States and the UK and parts of, Germany is like king of this because they've been doing it since 1947. Whatever your personal heritage is the thing that they're after, right? So it's not about being white. It's not about being male. It's not about being any in particular thing. It is whatever it is that is culturally relevant to you that they can exploit to get you to turn on that thing, so they are an available option, right?
Oh, definitely. And I agree with you in that regard, but we are primarily attacked today with white guilt. And I think that it has, like, I even made a video about 10 months ago called The Marxist Lie of Racism, how since class is really off the table, that for the last several decades, going back probably since my parents were young, the beginnings of the Marxist cancer to attack us has become based on race and sex. We've seen this weaponized now for generations. So that's why bringing it up to talk about it, I think, is valid, because if we talk specifically to people about how they're being attacked and get them to rally, like, I think that but it's a better framing to say you're attacked because you're a Westerner, because you can't change being white, just like you can't change being male. That's why that's the vector of attack that we're suffering, is because you can't change what you are. You can't change being male or female or white or black or Asian or whatever. And I think that's why we're seeing it weaponized that way. Well,
and again, those are you're fighting downstream the fight, right? So you say class is no longer relevant, but I will believe that the moment I hear the left say we should abandon saying the 1% or the 0.1% or the 0.01%, whatever number they're going after, right?
They kind of have, haven't they? I mean, what's this year been about?
One tier above however much money Bernie Sanders has is the people that we should be going after.
Right.
And so
it's the Bernie buffer. That's what you call that, the Bernie buffer.
That sounds reasonable to me. I mean, it's quite literally, the millionaires and the billionaires. Excuse me, Bernie, aren't you a millionaire? I meant the billionaires.
I just meant the billionaires. My bad.
It's just, but this is the thing, is they're not they're not particularly different, right? So we can say, you know, they've abandoned it, but AOC is out there talking about major corporations and the millionaires and the billionaires and the 1% and all of these things, and they do that perpetually because the game for them never changes, right? It's sort of like war is just two conflicting parties using weapons to kill each other. The weapons change over time, but war is the same, right? It
never changes, right, as we hear in Fallout.
Exactly, right. It's, you know, it's how much of the opposition can I destroy, and that is, you know, until I have won. And that is the way the left is running this game. So, you know, if you go back and read Mao, which I highly recommend everybody does, he talks in 1938 about how they're going to weaponize race in the United States to help destroy the United States. And then, equally speaking, at the same time, he's talking about what amounts to the Belt and Road Initiative right now, where what China should be doing if they want to promote the global revolution is providing services to countries that don't have or can't, for whatever reason, get their own services going on their own. And so, I mean, this is like the ANCAPs and the who's going to build the roads thing, because for the most part in the West, these questions are settled, right? Well, the governments build the roads, and you just end up in this really ridiculous discussion where you can never move forward in any way. And this is the same problem it is with race, with sex, with everything else, is you never get past, well, you know, today they're using AK-47s. And then you end up in this argument about whether or not they're using AK-47s for the next 500 years. And so you can, I mean, look, that is effectively what everybody is doing, right? So the ANCAPs are out there with who's going to build the roads. It needs to be about, this is a war on men. People are out there arguing about whether or not they're attacking men. And if you have any argument about whether or not most Western countries are attacking men, you are either a moron or not paying attention. And
you can say the same thing about whites as well, because we've seen that with the crazy white privilege stuff and the white guilt thing. Like it all comes, like you said, from a source of destabilization and control. And whatever you want to call this globalist NWO, anti-West, anti-male agenda or whatever, like the things that we need to do to fight it. I like the phrase that I learned from Jason, the psychological war, because this is not a war of people coming to our houses yet to completely strip us of property and of rights. Although we are seeing that happen a few places here since, things have gotten really out of hand in certain areas of America.
Well, I mean, Google the name Gary Willis and, and then after that, Google Waco, Texas. There's plenty of history of this, but even then, right? So I somewhere another month or two back now, I have a stream about the creation of the UN, and I got some flack from people because I didn't mention that Stalin was a founding member of the UN, right? And
I didn't know that, but it doesn't really surprise me.
Well, it was founded after World War II.
Yeah, it was the winning nations of World War II, which as soon as Stalin decided he didn't like Hitler, he moved over to the Allies side, and that was it. He was on the winning nations. And so, these things are all outputs of Marxism, and I, from a lot of the reactionary right, I get like, oh, it's not about Marxism, Don, it's about liberalism. Well, what basically everybody needs to figure out and do quick is that the ideas of the left, the premise of, as Sol would call it, the vision of the anointed, were forged in very high temperature to a very distilled thing, and that thing was Marx.
Yes,
and every output that he has. And so now there's an argument amongst the left about what brand of Marxism needs to be implemented, what portion of it needs to be the guiding principle. But the one thing they agree on is that Marx was right. And it doesn't matter where you are in the left. That is true.
Well, the reason that I gravitated towards the nationalist crowd is they point to things that I have noticed need to be addressed that people in our government and people in the media don't address, which is the forced demographic change in the West, especially with where you've got, like when Obama started it, it's in the Biden plan video that I did recently, where they want to use racial ethnic diversity being forced into every county and city. And like I point out in the video, it's specifically to get that sweet, sweet democratic socialist vote, baby. Like that's the, in my opinion, that's the whole purpose of it, is to break the ability of the native population from being able to resist this encroachment and control with votes. They want to just completely annihilate the ability in the systems we have for voting for us to be able to vote against this kind of stuff. Do you agree with that?
Sort of. I mean, I don't think there is a way to argue with the premise that, specifically in the southern border of the United States, the more people you import, statistically, the more Democrat votes you get. It is a fact. There is no way around it. Even if what we're saying is that 1 in 3 come across that border and vote Republican, that's still 1 in 3. 2 out of 3 will get you there eventually. And you can already see this in Texas down by the southern border, where illegal immigration and birthright citizenship are producing people who walk across the border, have a kid, then they may not be American citizens, but they're allowed to stay because their child is. And then
that's where the term anchor baby comes from, right?
It is. And so, well, those two things are different, right? So anchor baby is much more relevant here than birthright citizenship, because even at the time that the amendment was proposed, there was some discussion in the Senate, and they said, well, you could read this as, if somebody walks across the border and has a kid, then they're an American citizen. And they all went, oh, no, it obviously doesn't mean that. The only person who would say that is a moron. And then here we are doing exactly that. And so a lot of the problem here realistically comes more down to illegal immigration than it does legal immigration, which I know everybody hates me saying, oh, Don, so if we just imported all of Mexico legally, it would be fine. No,
it's not fine. Like that's the point I've been trying to make here today, is when you look at large scale demographics, I don't know if you watched my Yizz talk recently about eggs, about the egg question, but the reason that demographic large group numbers matter, and the reason why governments like to have census data, is to know what is coming in the future, to know how people are going to vote, what people want, how people are going to react to things. And when you look at how people vote by racial demographic in the West, it seems that only white people vote against big government, big welfare, what we could call progressive or leftism, whatever you want to call it. Whites are the only ones who vote against that more than 50%, and it gets lower and lower every year. And in lots of areas now, it's less than 50%. And all the other racial demographics are at least somewhat above 50% or way above 50% voting for big government welfare leftism stuff. So I think that that's probably the primary reason behind forced demographic change, is because of democratic socialism.
You're starting in the middle of that question to get that result, right? So immediately post the Civil War, when some demographic stuff was done, and look, make no mistake, they didn't have the capabilities to get as good of demographic information as we have now. Technology progressed, and that helps a lot. However, the black population of the United States, until, I don't know, the New Deal, was not very fond of the government. Their view of the government was effectively, it's sort of the same thing it is now, except that they weren't asking for gibs. It was, if the government wants to do something and it involves us, then the government's going to screw us. And it's not precisely that, but it was pretty close. And then once the New Deal went through, what you started to get was them in the 60s going out and marketing to black people, hey, we're going to pay you to not have fathers in the homes.
Yes.
And not having fathers.
And I tell people all the time, if you go back to before long before civil rights stuff, you see that blacks had a much higher, well, not much, but it was a notably higher percentage of married couples raising children. They had very close-knit families. And then after the New Deal, that was basically destroyed because they started subsidizing single black mothers, and that just ruined everything for blacks in cities.
And it does, right? Because the thing is, it's not immediate, and we have the attention span of gnats. And so if you go back and you examine this, what you find is in like 1958, something like 70% of black families had a father in the home, so 80 or something, a gigantic number.
And now it's what, like 17.5% or something like that? Like, it's really low now. It's really bad.
I mean, it depends on the survey that you're looking at, but it's over. I think the best numbers I've seen for this are somewhere around 75% have no father in the home. That is an incredible number.
The last time I got numbers on it was from Vince over at Red Elephants. I like his content because he does a lot of data and statistics stuff. And the number I heard from him was in cities, black fatherhood is down to like 17% now.
Yeah,
like, it's pretty bad.
And
I mean, obviously higher in the rural area, like you would expect.
Well, so in cities is a little bit of a game to be played too. You know, if I wanted to produce some statistic that said black families have 95%. Fathers in the homes, I would go to any of the more upscale black neighborhoods in the country, of which there are still plenty, because most of that 17% that you're finding is black families who are above median wages, right? And substantially above. You are talking 1% income and or wealth at that point, because it turns out that even today, if you are in a black family with two parents in the home, you're doing pretty well. In fact, it's one of the only things that is a pretty good guarantor of success in the United States. Not 100%, but it's like really.
No, having a successful, healthy family is a very high predictor of success, just like a higher than normal IQ is a higher predictor of success. Just general life success, I mean.
This is the other thing, is that we talk about, a normal and healthy family, and that is an abstract term that doesn't mean a lot, right? So
when I say healthy family, I mean a married couple that is simply extant. It doesn't necessarily mean they're that great. It's just if you have a mother and a father who are a mother and a father to a child, that child's life possibility seems to be much higher than children who don't have one or both.
Absolutely, and that's the thing, because the implications of that are kind of staggering. The premise here, and the premise that plays out in the data, is that even crappy two-parent families are better than single parents, just hands down, across the board, in every metric. So you could have garbage parents, and you're better off than somebody who only had one. And that is an incredible statement to make, because the implication there is that there is something about two-parent families that supersedes even fairly good parenting, right? So if you had a fairly good single mom is still more likely to produce a bad outcome than in garbage two-parent families. That's incredible. But the thing about this, and a big problem that I see with a lot of, and I say this all the time, if you are saying pro-white things in this country, you are radioactive, and nobody can touch you. It's just true.
I started realizing that about 6.5 years ago now, because this was before Trump even got elected for the first time. He was. I started noticing this before he was even running. I think this was 2014. I did, as most of you know, I'm intersex, and I enjoyed adding to out west. There was a lot of panels and seminars and stuff about trans people and different gendered people and non-binary and all the other progressive craziness. And I liked to go to talk about the medical side of people who are different, who do have genetic hermaphroditism, who do have intersex conditions and glandular conditions, to try to add sense to the craziness. And I eventually got ousted from that group because of one particular time. This young blue-haired progressive idiot brought up how we need to start making things about race. And I said, why do we need to make things about race? Almost everyone in this area is, because this was in Albuquerque, New Mexico. And I said, people here are very heavily Latino, and we have a very noticeable Native American population. Navajo, I think it was Navajo and Zuni were the primary ones. And she wanted to well, I say she, it was a they, them weirdo, but what they wanted to put forward was talking about black people and black oppression. And I was like, you realize that in this city, we have almost zero black people. And if we're going to talk about anything racial, we should talk about the severe rampant alcoholism and domestic abuse in the Native American population. That's what your time would be best suited. And then I got called a white supremacist and a racist and asked to leave because of bringing that up. What can you do with this type of talk? Like, it's crazy. And the fact that talking sense about demographics, talking sense about trying to help people by speaking about the truth or speaking about statistics, if that makes you haram, like you said, they don't want to have a discussion. They only want you to bow down or kiss the ring. That's all they want.
There are two options with the left. You can kneel, or you can be destroyed. Yes. And those are, and dear everybody, take any discussion between somebody even vaguely on the right. And by that, I mean, I define the right and left most often as to the right of Mao and then the left, right? And
you said that on your show today, didn't you?
Usually, right? It gets said probably 20 times a week because it's an important differentiation, right? You know, it only because it's the most popular stream on the channel. I was having a discussion with Sargon about this, and look, politically speaking, and in the world of policy, Sargon and I disagree about a lot of things, right? And the simple reality is you can still be kind of socialist. You can still think, as he does, that the NHS is a great idea and not think that it's time for the global revolution. Yeah. And that right now is there's a reality that we need to get to that's what we have to work with. It doesn't matter, where it is that your preferred outcome is. It doesn't matter what it is that you want to see in the end. The reality of this situation is it is quite literally to the left of Mao versus to the right of Mao. Yep. And a lot of people think they're on the left of Mao. You know, they hear things going on, and eventually they hear something that irritates them. And that thing that irritates them is when they find out they're to the right of Mao. And then the left comes for them, and they want, this is...
I'd like to say something about that, but before I do, I want to remind chat, if you would like to pose questions to me, Don, and Kizza, you can use the question widget over on Entropy. And at the end of the show, I will be taking and reading any super chats that we get, as well as the questions and comments in the Entropy question widget. And Zen-chan here in chat will be linking the links to do so. Now, in response to what you just said, I do agree with you, but I have stopped using the left-right paradigm because I don't think that that's helpful anymore. Because like you said, it's basically people who don't want our civilization destroyed and kind of want things to be sort of how they've been for the last couple of hundred years in a way, versus people who want to completely redo everything and throw the hierarchy over on its head and create the socialist utopia. Like, you've basically got two camps of people, which is what led me from the sort of economic right-wing American libertarian group to the it doesn't matter left or right, we need national unity and nationalism crowd. And that's why a lot of what I talk about is about race and demographic change, and more so about religion in a lot of ways in the UK and in other parts of the EU with the forced encroachment of Islam. I think that the reason that we need to have some kind of, if you want to call it people on the right, but people that want their national sovereignty, that want to control their own destiny, that want to control their way of life outside of these globalist government type things, it's basically us versus them. So I think nationalist versus globalist is a much better way to frame it instead of left versus right, even though you're right that the progressives and the intersectional feminists and the Marxists and all that, they predominantly are the major war force that is attacking us for the end goal. So go ahead. I heard you breathe in. That means you want to talk. Go ahead.
This is a distinction that everybody makes in some fashion. Again, whatever your pet project is, that's where you draw the distinctionary line. And this is the thing, is I don't have a pet project. I mean, my pet project is once the progressives are wiped from the face of the earth, either ideologically or otherwise, then I'm done. And this is the thing, is that it is all of what you're talking about, globalism, demographic changes, etc., these are all evolutions of Marxism into modern day parlance, right? Because it is worth noting that Marxism took a hell of a beating in public terminology in 1947, again in the 50s, and then again in the 60s, and then again in the 80s. Every time it starts to become pretty prominent, it starts taking a hell of a beating. And the one thing that the left has learned to do better than anyone else in all of the history of the world is to rebrand themselves. So if they say, well, what we need is a global Marxist revolution to get global communism. And then everybody goes, that Soviet Union thing is really not going well. And then they go, we didn't mean communism. We just meant we need a global government who is going to make sure that everybody is equal and that everybody has all their basic needs met. And I'm like, that sounds a hell of a lot like global communism.
And that's why that's what led me to liking Jason Kuna's language around anti-whiteism, because instead of trying to call it the words that they choose, which will always be different and are going to be above most people's heads, you call it for what it does. You call it anti-Western. You call it anti-white. You talk about how it wants to break Western civilization and supplant what us and our forefathers have built, and either destroy it or take control of it and get rid of all of us who say boo about it. So that's why I think that it's helpful to label things anti-Western, anti-male, anti-white, that kind of thing, because it just cuts to the core of what it is and what it does. And then that lets people be able to sort of rally around that and have an easy way to talk about it. And I think that language and ideas is a great way that we can fight back without having to resort to actual violence, because actual violence is not being done to us yet. That we are being dominated and destroyed psychologically and spiritually in this war that we're in right now.
Well, so you have two major problems. One is that, again, your view there is very localized. If you go to
doesn't it need to be for nationalism, for national unity and protection?
Well, so if the intent here is to wipe them off the face of the earth, then localized is not going to help.
Yeah, but we have to save the West first. We're really the only holdout against this crap. Aren't we?
I don't even know how much we are anymore.
Okay. I agree with you on that, but I'm saying, like, when you look at people at a racial lens, like Western civilization comes from white people, African civilizations come from African people, Asian civilizations come from Asian peoples, and the structures that led to the boom of global capitalism and the boom of whatever you want to call the West, liberal democracies, or whatever language you want to put on that, Western civilization has been the conduit through which most of the world has been introduced to technologies and methods of farming and industry and logistics that have lifted us all towards to where we are today. And if we as a people are supplanted and lose power, even if we're not actually genocided, if the people who cared about all that stuff, who built that stuff, if we become a minority in our own countries, then don't you think that what we built and that conceptualization of governance is going to be gone for good? Because I think that.
Well, so a little bit of your problem here is a fallacious association, right? So black culture in the United States comes from Northern England.
Okay. Tell me more about that.
This I gotta hear.
Yeah.
So long before we were complaining about black culture as it is now, things happened like the Irish immigrated en masse to the United States, and specifically because geographically where they're located, they landed in New York. And when they landed in New York, the deal with immigration at the time, specifically large waves of immigration, is immigrants would move into Fifth Street, and then as they acclimatized to the culture, they would move out of Fifth Street, because Fifth Street was the place where the unacclimatized portion were. And as that generation would die off, a new wave of immigrants would come, and they would move into Fifth Street, wash, rinse, repeat. And this had just been going on for years. And when the Irish showed up, Fifth Street became known as the Bloody Fifth. And so the reason for that was because the Irish would show up and they'd get drunk and they'd start knife fights. And they, would propagate this, let's have a drink and a fight kind of thing. And as that sort of went away, there's still outputs of that because they were good at politics and etc. Now, how it is that Black culture in that sort of way permeated itself or came from Northern England is that when the Northern English came to America, they were the ones who moved to the South. And they were much more rural. They were not the high class of England, and the axe is, as opposed to ask, is a Northern English thing. It is a thing that has been around there since the beginning of time. Yes, it's gone away quite a bit as education has gone on, but equally speaking, so was the fight the power thing because the Northern English were not looked after very well by the Southern English. They didn't really like the general zeitgeist of the high class political people screwing with them. It's the kind of thing that you see expressed in the Civil War quite a bit. Well, at the same time, the large quantities of Black people that lived in the South picked up all of that Black culture, and once they were no longer held down, they moved to the rest of the United States. This is where you get things like Chicago and Detroit, because they would move with labor, and so you see the Black populations increase in pretty dramatic numbers when, shortly after Henry Ford, because Detroit was hiring people and they didn't care very much about race. And so Black people would move up to Detroit, and on and on and on it goes. All of this, lots and lots and lots of it, is mostly in effect of Northern British people moving to Southern United States and owning plantations because they were farmers in Northern England. That's what they did. And so they came here and they did the exact same thing. And then they passed on that culture to whatever quantities of Black people were down there. It's worth noting that Black culture, as we describe it, is very divided. And what is really ridiculous is you can trace the divide back to initial immigration points in the United States, because if you initially landed in Northern America and you were Black, there is a near 100% chance that you are not a part of gangster culture. You are not a part of any of this screw the police kind of thing. You and your family, all the way back to whenever it was that you first immigrated here, were doing pretty well. And equally speaking,
perhaps you're misunderstanding what I'm saying. Like, I appreciate you walking us through all that. That was very interesting. I hadn't thought about that before. Mm-hmm. But I'm not saying that Black people are bad or Latinos are bad. That's not what I'm saying. Mm-hmm. What I'm saying is the reason that I talk about race and racial demographics is because that's what's being weaponized against us. And it's undeniable, statistically speaking, the things that I've talked about how people vote by race, crime rates by race, the things that race matters in large scale. Those things matter, and we need to talk about them. Like, I'm not someone who wants racial purity or an ethno state. Not only do I think that stuff isn't obtainable, I think that that the things you would have to do to get that are unethical, and I don't want to do them. What I want is for people to be able to have racial peace, racial unity, and have national, not even pride, but just national peace. Like, if we are going to have people who aren't white living in white majority countries, you can't have people banding up along racial lines and fighting each other. And you can't have one race being crippled and told that if you like your race, you're a naughty no-no word. And another type of race, oh, if you like your race, then you're celebrated and lifted up, and that type of pride is plastered on billboards by the government and education and everything else. Like, we can't have that. And that's why I think it's critically important that we bring this to the forefront of people's minds and make them talk about it, because it's the thing we're being told we can't talk about. So that's why I picked up the race torch recently.
Again, I think you have a misdiagnosis here. What you're talking about is political eugenics, and that, I mean, I don't know that I've ever phrased it like that before this exact moment, but that is what
I like it though. We're going to say that's a Don. We're going to TM that for Don. Don is trademarked political eugenics. I like that, Don. Please continue, my friend.
Well, I mean, that is the output of, let's be honest, vote buying, right, by race. And that is what we're talking about when we're saying, the New Deal was marketed in the 60s to black people. Hey, kick fathers out of the home. We know that this will produce you wanting more Gibbs for future generations. It's political eugenics. The premise is you create some incentives to vote the way that you want them to in the future, and then you have that handed down generationally. I don't know that there is a better term than political eugenics, because
that's really good. I like that. It's good. It's good.
And so the
go ahead.
problem with that is that if you can make that happen, if the creation of political eugenics and outputs of it over the long term are accurately described, then it's not about race. It's about the politics and incentives.
Okay, well, to me, I think that we both agree on what's happening and why it's happening, but we just disagree on what the focus of conversation should be about the same thing. Am I getting that right?
Earlier on, I said you had two major problems, and we're kind of bogged down in one, but this gets directly to the other one.
Oh, let's go on to the other one. Please continue.
Which is to say that it doesn't. This goes right on to the you are politically radioactive if you say pro-white things ever for any reason, and the reason for that is innumerable. But the big headliners are one. Whether or not we should not have guilt for being white, a lot of people do. And so you're somehow going to have to convince people that even the ones who think they have no guilt for being white, but are out there saying, well, we can't have a discussion amongst white people about who can say the N-word. The black community.
Sorry, your voices and impersonations are great. I'm sorry, I wasn't trying to. It's just you're funny.
Sorry, thank you. But for these people, that is an output of white guilt, right? So who is arguing about who's allowed to say cracker? Literally nobody, right?
I would like all the crackers to shut the hell up.
There you go.
There we go.
Funny how it's always the crackers who complain about that shit.
Oh yeah, I've said ever since I started using the anti-white language, I've always said the worst of the anti-whites are themselves white, or fellow whites, so to speak.
Yeah, just like those who are black who hate blacks, and they're considered an Uncle Tom or an Uncle Ruckus clone.
Well, and there's the thing is that for the Uncle Toms of the world, they don't hate black people, right? And that's not what the slur's about, right? It's
of course.
But this is a race war and you sided with Whitey is what that's about. And that's another thing is that post the 60s you see a lot more black nationalism than you did in 1955. It just simply was not a thing in comparable levels. Did it exist? I'm sure it existed. I'm 100% certain there were a bunch of black nationalists running around talking about how we need to give them Alabama or something. But after the 1960s, it propagated pretty hard. And all of this correlates all too well with other losses that were made by America. We gave over the institutions to the Marxists, and then we said, hey, you guys will look after that, right? And shock of shocks, that was a bad idea. But regardless, you have, if you are going to say, and look, I'm sure I get plenty of hate for saying that if what we're going to do is have all of these pro-racial identity groups running around America, eventually it is a logical reaction that somebody's going to show up and be pro-white. If that's the game that we're playing, somebody is going to do it, and it's going to happen. There's not going to be a way around it. And, the answer to that is either we abandon racial ideology unto itself, or you're just going to have to live with the fact that somebody is going to go well, regardless of whether or not I like white things, if my choices are to be killed by black people because black nationalism or not be killed by black people because black nationalism, then I'm going to go with not being killed. Yeah. And it is just a reality. However, this gets to the other major problem. The only racial group with an outgroup preference is white liberals.
Yeah.
The only one.
Yep, the only one.
Please don't call them liberals. Call them what they actually are, regressives.
The regressive left, yes. I hear that a lot from the UK people.
Just call them regressives. That's all they are.
Well,
regressives.
So, as usual, I don't get hung up on names too horribly much, right? You know, we're all talking about the same thing. They, again, the left got forged into Marxism post Das Kapital.
I didn't say it earlier, but earlier when we talked about don't call them liberals and all that, liberalism became a problem because of the infection that weaponized it against us. Like, if you go back 100 or 150 years or whatever, the concept of individual liberties, the rights to private property, and all that kind of stuff, I still think those are good ideas. But the flow of liberalism in the West has become, in my opinion, weaponized to be illiberal, and that's why I don't use the term liberal anymore. I stopped it. Like, it's not about, and it hasn't been about, the things that I think classic liberalism led to that were good since before I was even born. So I don't use the term anymore. But anyway, I just wanted to throw that in from earlier.
So that's a. Let's get hung up in Dawn's autism for a minute.
Okay, all right.
That's a thing that in the world of things that nobody knows except me, apparently, is if you go back to England in 47, 46, where 5 seconds after World War II ended, there was a socialist party. There was the Labour Party, who was like basically the Socialist Party, but light. And then there was a Liberal Party. And the Liberal Party was very small. It had no power. And that was the group of people that you're talking about. And they were watching what the Fabians in particular were doing and going, oh my God, are you serious? We have to stop this. And the Socialist Party had a lot of power. They held some giant seat majority in the UK, compared to other, if the individual parties were compared as opposed to some coalition. And so they went to the Tories and they said, hey, we'll keep Churchill in there, but you're giving us the NHS. And Churchill has a bunch of speeches where he's talking about the NHS is a bad idea and he doesn't think they should do it and it's entryism for socialism and on and on and on. And it still gets attributed to him. But if you go back and you look at who designed it, it was the head of the Socialist Party. And the Liberal Party at the time was fighting their ass off to get rid of them and have... Right around there is where you see the socialists co-opting the term liberal because they infected the Liberal Party and then just folded it into Labor.
Yes.
And prior to that, they were happily open socialists. And then socialism itself got kind of a bad name after World War II.
Oh, gee, I wonder why.
Yeah, shocking. And so they went, oh, yeah, we're not
you
socialist.
Stack a couple 100 million bodies under a word, it kind of gets a bad taste.
Just a small correction. It was the Labour Party who founded the NHS. To give you the exact guy's name, it was Onuren Bevan.
So he gets the credit for it, but there is a guy who wrote out what the NHS would be. He is the guy who wrote out the plan to nationalize all of the church hospital things and all that other sort of stuff. He aggregated all the data for it, and then he handed that thing over to the Labour Party. The socialists made that thing.
Are you by any chance referring to the book known as The Cathedral by Archibald Joseph Cronin?
No. Okay. What I did, because once again, let's get into Don's autism, is I went back and started reading the drafting documents for the NHS from the very beginning. And the people who signed on to that document, and I'm terrible with names, but the people who signed on to that document, the people who were doing the research, were all MP Socialist Party, MP Socialist Party, over and over and over and over again. And there's one guy and then there's like 5 assistants, but they hand it over because even at the time, the Fabians were saying, we can't be the ones who actually forward any of this, because if we do, then we can be held accountable if it goes wrong. And I mean, whether or not they were just disgusting human beings, they knew what they were doing and they were pretty smart guys.
Well, I mean, I'm just looking at the general election for 1945, and Labour got 393 seats, Conservatives got 197,
Mhm.
Liberal got 12, Liberal National got 11, Independent got 8, National got 2, Commonwealth 1, Communist 2, Nationalist 2, sorry for the dog, National Independent 2, Independent Labour 2, Independent Conservative 2, Independent Labour Party 3, Independent Progressive 1, and Independent Liberal 2.
So a little bit of what you're looking at here is that when the Labor Party was created, it had no power, but it later ate the Socialist Party. Again, because the name socialism got a bad idea. So I would be willing to bet that what you're looking at is all of the Socialist Party votes being counted as Labor.
Possibly, but like this is just a direct election result. But some of these parties, hell, they don't even exist anymore. Like Socialist Great Britain, United Socialists, Agriculturists, Democratic, Christian Pacifists, Liverpool Protestant, Commonwealth Labour. Like
So
half of these parties that I'm reading don't even exist today.
right. In fact, none of those exist today, with the exception of Labor, as far as I know.
So, well, yeah. I mean, it's just honestly, I would honestly.
We are moving into the second half of the show now that we've moved past the hour mark. And I'd like to remind everyone, we do have Entropy, which will be shared in the chat shortly. Go ahead and get on that, Zen. Over on Entropy, you can give financial gifts in the form of super chats, and you can also leave questions and comments that I will be addressing towards the end of the show over on the question widget. You can also send us super chats on Streamlabs, as well as PayPal and DLive. So you can donate and send questions in all of those formats, which we'll be getting to in about 45 minutes. So for the second part of the show, I would like to move into talking about what we can do together to actually work towards some type of survival for us and some type of reclaiming power over our communities, our lands, our government, whatever you want to call it. I know that you have basket weavers. That's an excellent thing. Did you start basket weavers? Was that you?
Nope, that was Academic Agent.
Oh, so. that was AA that started that. Okay, I didn't know which one of you started it. Okay, because I'm in there and I like it. Obviously, getting together, making communications, getting people talking about how to fight back against our enemies, and of course, for Susan WikiWiki and anyone else listening, I'm not talking about a violent insurrection against the government. I just mean fighting back politically and ideologically against our enemies. What do you think we can do in our daily lives? Me, you, everyone else listening. Let's talk about things we can do to make things better. I'll let you start, Don.
So, I mean, this is going to sound really basic and stupid, but it is probably the very beginning of anything that we should be doing, which is to say, I have a video up about how to meet people, how to meet like-minded people or something like that. And realistically, it would work for the left. I'm sure it does work for the left. It's exactly the kind of thing they do. But it is how to meet people who are not radical leftist is basically what it is. And that might sound ridiculously stupid. It is right along the idea of basket weavers, right? So, oh, hey, you live 3 miles from me. I never knew. I guess, we can at least hang out and talk. But so much of, again, the to the right of Mao portion of the world is looking around and going, I'm alone. And that kind of loneliness, that kind of self-isolation is the kind of thing that means we may very well be a silent majority. We may very well be the people who would in any way absolutely plow over any of these elections, but we're all disenfranchised. We don't care. This happens a lot in California, right? The Republican vote in California is always, the turnout is always something like 50% of the people registered Republican over the course of their lifetime. And so what you end up with is the right doesn't know that they have friends, right? And so quite literally do very simple things, right? So a lot of, if you're working with your hands kind of things, is where you find more conservative people. It's just a fact. either because the selection bias says that conservative people work with their hands, or because if you work with your hands, you end up a little bit more conservative just by nature of what you're doing. And it doesn't matter which it is, the output's the same. You find more conservative people there. And if you run in and you say, you start out big, we're screw the left, then everybody in the room is like, bro.
Yeah, it's hard to reach vagues and normies that way when if you rattle on and get it loud like Alex Jones, it doesn't really get people to want to hang out with you or listen to what you have to say. You have to be more subtle and more approachable when you're just reaching out to people.
It's a fact. And there's a comment on that video that says, be conservative in your search for conservatives. And I wish I would have come up with that line, because that is perfect.
Yes.
All the rest of our lives, we know, don't overspend, don't overextend yourself, don't put yourself in positions that are bad, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. And until we are out looking for people that we think would be like-minded, and then the only way we do it is like, woo, Trump 2020, and if you're not on the train, you're a damn communist. And like everybody in the world is like, could you just not be quite so cringe, please? Right?
Yeah. All right, I have found the Basket Weavers Discord link. I knew I had it somewhere, so I'll be sharing that.
God, what you just said, Don, reminds me of the All Lives Matter shit with the BLM. I hated those people and slapped them around the face.
Right.
Indirectly speaking, I'm like, no, don't say that, because you know it's a lie. Don't say that.
Even if it's not a lie, even if that is what they think, right? Look, the reality is that these people are going to go run out in front of the Black Lives Matter crowd and scream all lives matter, right? And then, certainly Black Lives Matter doesn't care. But on top of that, who are you signing on with that? Who watches that happen and goes, yeah, what I want to do is stand in front of a crowd of angry people and shout all lives matter? Like, you've probably got 90% of the people you're ever going to get.
Well, the only issue is, sorry to interrupt, but what pisses me off with that, the same people who post that are, ironically enough, the same people who are against all those quote-unquote refugees crossing the channel.
Well, those two things aren't mutually exclusive, right?
Well, that's true, but it kind of makes it, when you say all lives, people are going to accept that as all lives, not everyone excluding this, and this group.
Well, so presumably they're not excluding that group, right? All lives matter doesn't inherently mean that we owe you a house in downtown London, right?
Well, that's true, but at the same time, I could say, so all child connoisseurs' lives matter.
I mean, you probably get some pushback on that,
but let's be fair. Like the left are pedos. We know that. Like it's not news. It's been around for a long time.
Well, right. I specifically use that term to get around the YouTube algorithm. Thank you, Lee, for teaching me that. But me personally, I don't know how you feel about this, Dom. Me personally, I found the most effective method, if you ever have to encounter the enemies, is to use their own tools and logic and be more aggressive and assertive with it against them.
I think the point Don was making, though, is people, like, you can't ignore the genetic element. Like, I'm not trying to bring this back to race, but, like, you can't ignore the psychological, cultural element of what makes a person not a leftist. What makes someone culturally, spiritually, religiously, or even academically or governmentally conservative. That kind of radical behavior, so to speak, is going to push those people away and not want to have anything to do with you just by nature. So I think that's what Dom was speaking to, right?
Well, I mean, it's not. You are dealing with people who presumably are somewhat conservative, and the way that you want to attract them is to be not conservative. Now, that alone is that juxtaposition by itself should make the argument, right? If you see a guy wearing a suit and tie and you walk up to that guy and go, so what I'm thinking about doing is painting my hair blue, that guy's going to go, you're an idiot. And we all know that. right? That's not like a debate or a discussion. We all know this is true. And yet what we want to be able to do is go out there and act like the left, yell at people and be jerk offs, or walk into a room and not have a relatively conservative conversation, right? So like, oh, hey man, you like playing pool? I like playing pool. And then I don't know, you play pool with the guy for a couple of weeks, and you say, at some point, invariably in the world we live in, politics is going to come up. There's not a way around it. Man, I just wish taxes were lower. And if the answer to I wish taxes were lower is like, hell yeah, screw taxes, then you've probably got something to work with.
Because you got somebody to talk to and to work with. Yeah, exactly.
But, if the answer is like, but we need more social programs, then you could probably leave that alone, right?
Yeah. No, I get what you're saying. So let's keep moving on here. Something that I think that is important is, just a second. That's the garage door. Can you still hear me okay?
Yeah. We can hear you okay. Yeah.
Something that I think is important is bringing people together just so we know that we're not alone. And a big part of what I do is to get the knowledge out there that you're not alone. And I think that's why United Basket Weavers exists. That's why Don talks and brings people together and does what he does. That's why we have hundreds of people of the we don't like progressives, fight Marxism or whatever cluster, the nationalist cluster. We have so many of us casting a broad net, trying to get people to come hear what we have to say, is because I know what it was like to live in a city and have no one to talk to about guns, no one to talk to about smaller government, no one to talk to about, hey, this race-based Marxism stuff sure is cancer, isn't it? No one I could speak to about it at all in a city of like 1 million people. And I think the main thing that we need to do to start uniting the right, and I hate that phrase, but it's kind of what I'm talking about.
It is nuclear now. You can
I avoid
that phrase like the plague.
I know, but uniting people together to let them know they're not alone and that we can have unity against this looming Leviathan that is going to screw us all over. I think that talking and community is a huge part of that. And the focus that I want to have on this part of the show is, let's assume that we can do that. And we have millions of us talking together about this. What do we do? What do we do on a local community level? The things that I put forward is, be very attentive to your local elections and local appointments. That's where a lot of this cancer starts. Be very attentive at what goes on in your local youth groups, your local churches, your local schools. Fight back against progressivism and race-based Marxism in those institutions with all of your might, because they will destroy you if you let them. So I think those are some things we can actively do in our day-to-day to feel like we are making a difference and doing something active. Send letters, send handwritten letters, make phone calls to people, that kind of stuff in your state, in your county. I think that if we get thousands, if not millions of people all doing that, we can actually fight back against this psychological war and have some type of progress. So that's some things that I have to put forward. I'd like to hear some ideas about that from the both of you today, especially you, Don.
So you want to go ahead? Because I think we both know I'll talk forever.
My case, I've already told Yizz this, but my local MP before the last election, we asked her to get some help regarding getting a house because we were about to be made homeless 2 years ago. And she, because she was in Labour, was a useless cunt and backed the council, even though they were blatantly lying. We had provided evidence for it. And I personally went out of my way to publicly humiliate her in front of a school. But the problem was she still got elected, but I actively got one over her. And in other aspects, I actually made a member of the Socialist Workers' Party in front of a crowd straight up admit that Islam is a fascist ideology. And then literally left their little stand they made and packed up and left.
So if you're going to be doing those kinds of things, right, you need video. I don't know what else.
To be honest, sadly, I didn't have video at the time.
That's not the kind of victory or the kind of thing I'm talking about, Kizza. I'm talking about stuff that regular folks can do to help us fight this and help us win.
Well,
So
there's a relevance here, right? So if you are the kind of person, and there are plenty of us out there, and I am this kind of person. If you are the kind of person who's willing to stand in front of a politician at a giant meeting and go, so I take everybody's name out of it, and be Andrew Breitbart and go, hey, I am standing here in front of national news asking this politician, about Monica Lewinsky and Bill Clinton. Breitbart became a political powerhouse 5 seconds later. And then Anthony Weiner and, kid touching, right? Doing it again. If you're the kind of person that does that, and it's not on video and not going around the internet, then you feel good, right? You stomped on the left, but they felt no real loss for it, right? They went, oh, look, 50 people in front of me, I just lost, but guess what? The rest of this district, whatever it is, doesn't know that this happened, doesn't care that this happened, and it's just going to be a rumor that everybody's not going to believe.
Yeah, so I need a camera crew with me next time and a mic to pretend I'm some independent reporter like Tim Poe.
Not even a joke, right? I mean,
yeah, that's not a joke. No, I don't know, Don, you probably didn't see my my recent activism where I had some great success locally here at a university. But when you show up, don't show up alone. And when you do show up, look decent. Wear a suit, wear nice clothes, carry a bag, take at least one guy with you, preferably two, and that way you look like a professional team when you're out doing stuff, and you don't look suspect. And it's a lot harder for people to socially attack you or shame you if you're in a small group of 2 or 3, because then you look like you're a little more legit, like you've got, some organization or whatever.
Don't be dressed any worse than jeans and a t-shirt ever.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
And I don't care how you walk around your house. I don't know, walk around in a thong with a dildo strapped to your forehead. I don't give a damn. Never walk outside that, right?
Dildo unicorn.
Exactly. Because the moment you walk out, right? The moment you walk out and you've got something ridiculous on, right, then it is immediately that person is ridiculous. But if you're wearing blue jeans and a t-shirt, then you're wearing blue jeans and a t-shirt, right? You're just everybody, and tailor your clothing to whatever it is you're doing, right? So if you're going to go out and you're going to do something where you need to look professional, at least be wearing a button-up shirt. I don't care if you're wearing a tie, button-up shirt, slacks, even if it's button-up shirt and jeans, something along those, whatever it is that is local customary, that is, I'm looking better than I'm working in the yard.
Yeah.
T-shirt, yeah. Me personally, I prefer wearing tracksuit bottoms because they're comfy.
I don't even know what that is because I'm not British.
Okay. Instead of wearing jeans or trousers, they're basically the sort of stuff you see, quote unquote, athletes wear.
Okay. Yizz, you got really quiet. Something happened with your mic.
Are we talking like basketball shorts? Yeah.
Not quite like that, but basically. Not quite the quote-unquote gear you see. How could I say this without the YouTube censors or algorithm picking it up? Let's say the ghettoite, kind of similar to that, but not quite to that level.
So,
is that better?
Yeah.
Again, a lot of what you're doing there, have not skinny jeans or any of that other stupid shit. But if you're just wearing a pair of pants that looks vaguely nice and a t-shirt like this t-shirt that I'm wearing right now, don't wear that. Right. You're walking out with it doesn't matter that it's a movie t-shirt. Oh my God, there's a gun on your t-shirt. I mean, I live in Texas, nobody cares. But
for now.
Yeah,
or you could be me. Yeah, basically a 1993 original Doom shirt, but instead of Doom guy, it's Mario murdering all the enemies of the Mushroom Kingdom.
So, again, none of that. Just go get a plain t-shirt. I don't know, a nice little pocket right over here, that sort of thing. You'll probably be fine just like that. It gives you the kind of everyman look. If you're going to go give a politician a bunch of crap, wear a button-up shirt and a nice pair of pants.
Yes. Because you might end up being on camera, and you want the person that's in front of people locally to look clean cut and respectable, like they have sense, not a disheveled crazy person.
Yeah, and don't ever wear Crocs. for any reason.
Please,
I mean,
God,
that's just
never wear
general life
Crocs.
advice.
Unless you're a nurse, that's okay.
Maybe if it's a job requirement, and I mean
Yeah.
requirement. But
Yeah.
other these sorts of things, go to peopleofwalmart.com, take everything that you see on that site that's in your wardrobe and throw it away. These sorts of things, right?
I work for the Germans, and I don't personally want to wear any of that to these places because they're not easily could easily find me.
And therein is the thing, right? If you're going to go out and lay the hammer down on a politician, the reality of this is that worry is going to be there no matter what you're wearing, right? Because all it takes is one picture, right? If whoever you embarrass goes, find out who that is, then you're screwed. And
Right.
because they will find out who you are. That's just how doxing people that you see in real life is not difficult.
No.
Not in the slightest. And so, I mean, either you are prepared for this or you're not. And if you're not, then don't play with fire. You will get burned.
Then let's move away from playing with fire and move on to something else. Don,
play with the kids.
Yeah, Don, tell me something that the viewers that are listening, the people that we have that will listen to this later, what can normal folks do to help us fight this bulletless war right now? What are some things they can do?
So for those of you that have city councils and don't have municipal police departments, make sure you never get one. 100%. Make sure you never get a municipal police department. I'm not anti-cop. I generally like cops. Yeah, okay, fine, whatever, blah. There's some bad cops out there. But there is a reality of this situation that what you see in output is that it is not sheriff's departments en masse. LA sheriffs aside, because they're kind of garbage. But everybody else, it's not sheriffs that are out there arresting people for defending their property. The sheriff shows up to your house because a mob showed up on your front lawn. There's a decent likelihood that the guy gets out of the car and goes, "What the hell are you morons doing on his property? You're lucky he didn't shoot you already. And if he shoots you right here in front of me, then it was self-defense. Get the hell off his property." If a municipal cop shows up, you might go to jail.
Yep. Because here where I live is in basically the very rural outskirts of a small sort of kind of urban area in eastern Tennessee on the border of Virginia. And out here in the boonies, if like everybody has guns, we know each other. People go outside and shoot shit regularly. I know people in this area I've shot firearms with that I don't know their name. Like, that's how common and ubiquitous it is. It's like you go outside, it's like, oh, the gunfire's coming from the east tonight. That must be the McCoys over there. And of course, I'm not using their real name. And it's like, oh, hey, that sounds like little Johnny's new 410 shotgun he got that he's practicing with. That kind of thing. And around here, if somebody you don't know is prowling around your property, even if it's 200 yards from your house, it's not an uncommon thing for them to come outside with a dog and a shotgun and come see who you are. And around here, the cops aren't going to think anything bad about that. That's normal life around here. And that's a huge difference between what he's talking about. Knowing your local police is important, especially if you live in a place that doesn't have municipal police. Making sure that your area never gets municipal police is very important, because then you won't have that type of freedom with your property and your firearms anymore.
And you won't. And this is going to seem a little odd, but basically every law enforcement agency below the federal level has something. A picnic, I don't know, blood donation is really common. And, your cops and firefighters and everything, every, law enforcement / take care of the community organization is likely to be there. Go, right? Because one, what is the chance that you are going to, a pro-cop picnic and finding a wild leftist? I mean, the answer is basically zero. Or if they're there, they're standing over on the sideline going, all cops are bad. Look at my sign. And a giant group of people who don't have any interest in that are going, what a moron. And everyone who says what a moron is somebody you can work with, right? It's somebody that you can go, hey, look, in the future, maybe when they say we should have a municipal police department, we know that the sheriffs are good guys. Fine, expand the sheriff's budget. We're happy to hear it. No municipal police department. And a lot of that is about political incentives that are get complicated quickly, but there is a reality that sheriffs are more responsive to communities in general, right?
Mm-hmm.
And are really not fans of crime because it's the only metric they're ever judged by. Is, hey, look, my car's been broken into 15 times this month. You want to do something about that? And when you get to municipal police, you start getting, well, you need to understand that we're issuing people speeding tickets, and we're also making sure that their property has the right height grass, and it gets very diffuse very quickly, and they can never be held responsible for anything. And that's not how it works with sheriffs.
And for people that help protect the peace that go through your community armed and have power over you, that's the opposite of what you want. You want those people to be genuinely concerned that the people whose community they're supposed to protect actually have a say in whether or not they have a job next term. You want that, because then that guarantees that the people genuinely give a crap, or at least have to go through the motions of giving a crap. But municipal cops don't. They're working a job. They're basically an armed mercenary at the behest of municipal funding. That's basically what they are. And they don't necessarily have to give a crap about the places they're policing. Well, and I guess you could say the same about sheriffs, but at least they have an occupational reason to care.
Well, the difference here is mostly at command level, right? If you go talk to city cops, you're 90% likely to find a pretty based cop, right? Mm-hmm. The people who decide to be cops are usually pretty based. They're not jerk offs. Almost all of them are in it to protect their community. Mm-hmm. One of the realities of law enforcement is issuing speeding tickets. And if you talk to anybody who's been a cop, they're like, what the worst thing in the world is? Giving freaking speeding tickets. So, they don't like it either. And it's not that sheriffs don't issue speeding tickets. It's not that state police don't issue speeding tickets, et cetera, et cetera. It's just less of a thing, right? If you're doing 67 and a 65, the likelihood that the sheriff gives a damn is basically zero. But you better believe there are people in traffic court all over this country for doing 67 to 65.
So let's move away from that. That was a good bit of conversation. Anything else, Don, that you have to say that regular folks can do to help us fight back in this ideological war that we're in?
So city councils are a big deal. You would be incredibly surprised if you live, at least in American politics. I don't know how the UK works, but you would be incredibly surprised how much your city is screwing with you. Like, it is.
Oh, I know. Sorry to interrupt.
But it's the kind of thing where every now and again I've lived real close to the edge of city lines, and one side of the street has a rule and the other side of the street doesn't, and it's because the city line was drawn down the center of the street. And so one side of the street's going, well, hey, why don't you just, put up a brick wall around this one little area and turn that into a planter? And the guy on the other side of the street's going, I need to go down to the city and get a permit to build a planter that's 2 feet tall. I can't do that. It would cost $25,000. And the guy on the other side of the street goes, it cost me $40 at Lowe's. What the hell are you talking about?
Yeah. So that's definitely something. And I made a video recently called "What Can We Do," where I outline a lot of these things. It's not that long of a video. It's like 12 minutes long, 13 minutes. But the first half is what we can do on a local level and an individual level. And the second half is, once we actually get more political power, what we can do on a larger scale. So I don't know if you've seen that or not, but it's a lot of this kind of stuff we're talking about.
I haven't. The next step, okay, basically, you're starting with the closest political power to you, and you're moving upward.
Yes.
So, sheriffs are going to be close to you. Mayors are going to be somewhat close to you, right? If you live in a city of 1 million people, moving your mayor is going to be difficult, right? You're going to need 100,000 pissed off people to change the view of a mayor of a city of 1 million people. It's just a fact. If 10% of the city doesn't care about a thing, neither does the mayor. Your city councilman, though, even in a city of 1 million, is probably a city councilman over 100,000 people. So 10 grand is like an attainable number. Difficult, but an attainable number. And so you can at least make it look like you have that many people. You can, in the world of letter writing, you want to be in some proportional amount to this, right? So if 10% of any municipality is pissed off about something, whoever that politician is cares. If it's one guy, nobody cares unless it's a city of 3 people, in which case they care, right? But almost none of us live in a city of 10 people. We all live, and or whatever city it is that we end up having to bow to because it's the one that controls the county or whatever. It's not 10 people. Basically anywhere in the United States. So if you can convince a politician that 10% of their district is upset about something, then they will do something about it.
Yeah, and again, it is a numbers game. But if we get enough people, like we talked about before we started going down this path, getting people talking together is the first step. Then you can get people acting together. And it's really hard to get conservatives and libertarian types to want to go protest and get in front of people like we see the left doing. But people that are our people, our allies, it's pretty easy to get them concerned about their local communities, their churches, their whoever's appointed by their city, and pay attention to their local area to make phone calls and write letters. That's something that we should encourage everyone to do.
So you should avoid protesting at all costs.
Yes.
I don't know how else to say this. Any time that a group of people, even vaguely to the right, get together and march down a street, with the exception of the March for Life, and it does happen sometimes there too, but with the exception of the March for Life, anytime people on any right-wing issue get together and march or anything, the left shows up, causes a bunch of violence, and then it's blamed on right-wing violence.
Yep, and all of a sudden, here come the slurs. Here comes the white supremacist, Nazi, hater, bigot, xenophobe, all this other stuff. You get slandered by the media, you get called far right, all this other stuff.
Yeah, and
just basically don't do it, because it never ends well for us, and it doesn't do much other than make us have bad press.
There is a reality that if we could get enough people together who were willing to just get the hell beat out of them, and to the point of being killed, and that needs to be a relevant point here, right? Because take a look at what Antifa's doing. They're throwing bricks at the back of cops' heads.
The firearm march in Virginia went well. I almost went to that earlier this year.
I did go to that, and that did go pretty well.
Yeah, I heard it was really great. I wish I could have, but I was all ready to go. But I have people in my life I have to take care of who have cancer, and that's not easy. But
that'll get the way.
Yeah, but from all accounts, everything that I read about, all the videos I watched, it seemed really legit. And other than the usual smearing that we will always get in the media, I was very happy that nobody acted stupid. Nobody did anything dumb, and that was very cool to see. I was very happy with that. That gave me a little hope about things. So
one of the last things that I did when I was there is ask a cop if there were any problems, and he said, "Well, one person got arrested. They were causing a bunch of problems. Wouldn't take off a mask, and look, everybody's carrying guns, so no mess." And this is before cooties, so if you were wearing a mask, you were Antifa and there to cause a problem. And so they said overtly no masks, and one person refused to take it off, and he was like, "I think that's the only arrest. I think somebody got a ticket for something administrative." But
and to my knowledge, nobody even used a firearm or brandished one in any type of aggressive or defensive way. It was completely frictionless, wasn't it?
Yeah, basically.
Yeah.
I mean, there was a lot of, it depends on what you define brandishing as, but there was a lot.
I mean, you know what I mean? Like in a threatening way, or posting up to say back off, that kind of thing. Like, I don't think there was any of that I could find.
Or waving it around like they just don't care.
Yeah. Well, I mean, when you have 25,000 armed people, nobody wants to be the one to pick up the gun first. Nobody, right?
Well, Don, I really enjoy talking about this stuff, but we have to move on. We need to meet a timeline here. Before we move on to the next thing, is there anything else that you'd like to tell people that they can actively do to help fight against the progressive left that wants to destroy us all?
Nearly, depending on your resource, either time or money, nearly every government organization has some bureaucratic thing where you can file a single piece of paper and they will spend hours on it. And we need to investigate more of those, because if you can go down and file a complaint with your local city and they have to expend tens of thousands of hours and dollars to deal with your stupid complaint, then this ties them up. This burns their resources. This means they can't be using them to fight us. And we should be doing more of that.
All right. We are coming up on the end of the show. So for the next half hour or so, we'll be wrapping things up. And now is the time where we take questions from chat, and paid chats get priority. So I'm going to check all of the paid services, and we're going to see who left us any messages. Okay. Cash App is blank, and Streamlabs today, I think, is blank too. I'm going to refresh and make sure I'm logged in.
Questions.
Yeah, okay, nothing new over there. Now we're going to move to Entropy, because that's where I know we have questions and comments waiting. And as always, paid chats get priority. So Novi Hansa, hello Novi Hansa, good to see you again. Novi Hansa says, Yizz, no people are attacked and vilified for loving and peacefully advocating for their people except white people. We must openly reject the anti-whites and tell them no white guilt. Hale and 14. And this came in earlier, Don, when you and I were talking about race and getting people to realize that whites, just for being white, are under attack. And the point that he's making here is the one that I made earlier, that demographically, what has been weaponized against us is other races are either neutrally or positively praised for racial unity and racial cohesion, where we're vilified for it. So I do agree with what Nobi Hansa said right there. So do you have any, does the panel, the two of you have anything to say about that?
I'll take that as a no. So,
yes. Wait, sorry. I was looking at something else. Sorry.
So, yes, that's true. And here's a reality that you need to get over is that nobody cares. Nobody. Right. So I tell this to the various MRAs all the time is like, dude, I know, I know you talk about it all the time, how men are discriminated against. You know, you pull out the college statistics, the family courts, doesn't matter. Nobody cares. And whether or not that's right or wrong, that is the reality. If you go to average person on the street and you say men are discriminated against, they will laugh at you.
Yeah, but they don't laugh when you say whites are discriminated against. They don't do that.
No, they call you a Nazi.
No, they don't. Not in this area. Like I've been doing a lot of in-person activism lately, and I've been using the no white guilt, anti-white language, and it works. Like I've even got responses from the Conservative Students Union at the local university. I've gotten a small 30-second piece on local news, and I'm going around to organizations that deal with kids, education, and that kind of thing, getting people to talk openly about the anti-white sentiments in education and media, and people respond positively to it. And I don't think that they look at me like I'm crazy, or they think that, or they don't care. They do seem to care. It's all about how you phrase it. And when you say, you don't go be like, oh, hey, white power, brother, like nothing like that. It's you go and you say, hey, I'm sure that you've noticed the anti-white sentiment in our schools and media lately, haven't you? And almost everybody I talk to is like, yeah. So, I mean, it seems to work.
Some of this you can do, but if you're looking for the idea that white people will, and as the question was phrased, it's fine if there's a Asian students union. It's fine if there's a black students union. It's fine if there's a Latino students union. On and on and on and on. And look, I was this jerk off when I was in high school. I went straight to the office and I said, look, if you're going to have all these racial, student unions, then when do we get the white one? And they went, you need to get out. Right.
Right. It's like heretic. You said what cannot be said.
Yeah. And look, but the reality of this is, and I see it in regular chat. Oh, don't say it because people are going to laugh at you. The point here is, it doesn't get you anywhere, right?
It doesn't. In what I've done, it does open doors, and it does make people start paying attention to what I have to say, and at least be able to have a word to call what's happening, the bias, the whatever you want to call it. Simply calling it anti-white or anti-whiteism, that gives people a word that they can then use to weaponize to talk about the things that are being used against us.
So maybe, however, again, not the context of the question, though, right? So if what you're looking for is the white student union, you're not going to get it, right? That's
well, that's not the nature of the super chat. The super chat was just talking about what we were talking about. I'm not saying that we are going to flip-flop what's in universities. I'm approaching people that aren't in the Marxist universities to try to get them all against the awful anti-white university elements. So at least in an area like this, that can work. If you're in LA or something, probably not. But in a rural area like this, I'm having good success with it. And so, but anyway.
if you're in LA and doing activism for anything other than outright progressivism, I want to know how you haven't been stabbed. And
they don't take kindly out there, huh?
Right, no.
We don't take kindly to your types around here.
Yeah.
I'm sorry, what was that?
We don't take kindly to your types around here.
Yeah, exactly.
Forgive me for that terrible, terrible impression of a South Park redneck.
Make no mistake. That is, I have had people tell me that for advocating lower taxes. Right? We don't take kindly to your kind. Like, bro,
Mm-hmm.
are you like a really big fan of paying taxes?
Yeah,
I thought nobody wanted to give the government more money, at least not their own, right?
Of course. I mean,
Well, let's move on because we have to finish the show at some point.
No,
moving away from what Novi Hansa said, we have comments over in the question widget on Entropy, which I encourage all of you to use. Two things from Sealbahn. Oh, a third thing just popped up. We'll get to that too. Shielbahn or Zealbahn. First thing, if speaking in pro-white ways is politically toxic in America, why did Trump win in 2016 on the most explicit pro-white platform in modern political history? I think that's a good point. What do you think?
I can answer that if you don't mind.
Certainly.
I can explain it why. It's because the polls themselves, the published polls, the people who were necessarily like us wouldn't be honest on the surveys in fear of being slandered. So it was a case of, dare I say, the silent majority being vocal in terms of the vote.
So the correct answer to this is he wasn't explicitly pro-white. You don't have to like that. He wasn't. At no point did he run out and say, the white people of this country are under attack. He didn't go out and say we need to do more things for white people. A lot of this is the look, mass immigration needs to stop, and he got called racist just for that. Right. And for a billion reasons.
Talking about mass migration is explicitly pro-white because we're the ones under attack and being replaced.
See, the only way you come to that conclusion is if you already hold the idea that immigration is racial as opposed to power. Right. And so the point here for the left is to be able to get power. And if they thought they could just weaponize white people in the world of being white, they would have done that. And if you don't believe that, go back and look at Democrat ads immediately after the Civil War. Look at Democrat ads during the Jim Crow era. It was explicitly pro-white attacks. And the moment they found out that didn't work, they just swapped something else.
Well, I would query that because of the UK's case. We've had tons of immigration from Eastern Europe, and they're white as well. But guess what? People don't like it.
Yeah. So let's move on to the next thing in the question widget here, because this person said three things. Next, the Giobon or Zeobon says.
Shabon, I think it's how do you say Shabon?
I'm sorry, I don't know what language this is from. I apologize if I'm mispronouncing your name. I'm really sorry. This person says, if we can both reduce taxes by cutting the billions in foreign aid, military spending, etc., as well as provide programs to rebuild our destroyed communities, would you think that that's wrong? I certainly don't think that that's wrong. What about you?
Well, go ahead, Don.
So, you'll never hear me make an argument for foreign aid. To hell with foreign aid.
Absolutely.
Look, if we want to cut somebody a loan for some reason, then fine, we can cut them a loan. But this let's give people money thing, it has all the negative incentives of welfare. It creates all the same problems. It just creates it at a national level. In the world of military spending,
It's only 4% for the United States.
You know what I mean? Like we talk about military spending like it's a big deal.
Only 4%? It's got to be more than that.
No. Honestly, Yizz, if you look at the U.S. budget, it's only 4%.
What?
I'm serious. It's been consistently around 4%.
I don't believe that. I don't believe that for a second.
Yizz, I'm not being joking when I say this. It's only around 4%. But if you were to look at welfare spending in the United States, it's around 40%.
No, I know welfare spending is tremendous. I know that. But I thought that it would at least be 20 or 25% for our giant military.
No. But Yizz, here's the thing, though. Look at your GDP.
Yeah. So,
all right. Well, that's fine. That's fine. I'm not trying to argue. I'm just surprised. Like, I almost rejected it outright by shock. But no, we can move on. It's fine. It's fine.
In the world of what it costs out of the federal budget is something like $4 trillion. And we are spending, chat seems to think that it is $970 billion a year. This year's a really bad take because cooties money. We have effectively doubled federal spending this year. So it's difficult to say, but it's something like $4.5 trillion the last time I looked, and it was $750 billion at the time that we were spending on the military. So,
well, yeah, well, regardless of the nitpicking, let's move back to the statement. In general, I don't like federal programs, and I don't like the massive governments that we have, but we got them, and they ain't going anywhere. So if we do want to start limiting things like, aid for migrants, aid for people outside the country, and we are going to have some kind of, I don't know, restorative unity, I guess I would be okay with some shaving of federal funds going to that, because I may be a libertarian or ANCAP at heart, but I'm a realist. I'm a pragmatist, and I realize we have to work with what we have. So I'm not opposed to that idea. Good statement, by the way. Anything to say before we move on to the next one?
Sorry.
Go.
I mean, I'm just going to say right now what I would love foreign aid to be scrapped and for all that money to be recuperated. I would love to basically impose massive tariffs to companies that have packed up and left the West. Just to... this is going to sound incredibly petty and envious, but I do want I would love to see, for instance, just Western... I once used the word Western envious mentality against everyone else in the rest of the world. To say, no, we're not going to be... We're going to screw this free trade. We're going to put massive tariffs. Oh, you want to do business? Move your crap over here. Then we'll talk.
All right.
You're pushing up against the mercantilism problem of the early 20th century.
Yeah.
Economically, it's a really bad idea.
Well, I mean, I would argue if you look at China, it's been a massive success for them. Whereas we in the West have gone all free trade, and we've been screwed by
this is an economic argument that could go on forever. Let's just move on.
Yep.
Right. Because this is the kind of thing that I love hearing people argue and talk about, which is why I follow the economics people that I do. But let's move on. The last thing from this person commenting over on the entropy widget says, why should we not organize amongst ourselves, for ourselves, and by ourselves? Who cares what the anti-whites think? They are going to start killing us even more rapidly if nothing changes. And that goes back to what I was saying earlier, is I think that, again, I don't advocate for an ethno-state or ethnic cleansing or anything like that, but I do think that we need to have some type of Western racial identity again that's been stripped from us. A lot of people still have it, but the younger generations have grown up in a completely toxic anti-white system. And I think that is going to cause tremendous harm, not just to the West, but to our people in general across the world. So that's what I think. Ideas, questions?
Two answers to that question. One, of all races, it is only whites that hold any outgroup preference, regardless of what percentage it is. And two, the other answer, and by far the more correct answer, is the Federal Bureau of Investigation. Because if you organize around being white, you are a terrorist group. And you don't have to like that. You don't have to think that's true. You can give me the million excuses about how that isn't true. And guess what?
No, but it's true. It is.
The moment you do it, the Federal Bureau of Investigation says, oh, this is a pro-white terrorist group.
Just like if you try to build anything called a militia, the FBI immediately looks into you.
Yes.
And I guess you can't countersue them for a libel and slanderous statement.
No, that's why my response to this statement is, we should be doing this, but do it in a holistic way that isn't around white identity or white pride. Call it what Jason calls it, like white well-being or white positivity, and be sure to include people that aren't white. And that way you're not going to get on some FBI watch list or whatever by being some kind of... Because no matter what you do, if you try to make a white-only group, like Don said, you immediately go on a list. If the media catches wind of anything you're doing, you know what they're going to call you. So you just got to be careful when creating groups that care about white folks. So just be careful.
If you in any way do that sort of thing, the reality of that situation is it's not so much that you'll be on a list, right? So here's how ridiculously dangerous this is. If the FBI determines that you are a terrorist group and one person that you don't even know decides that they are going to saw the barrel of their shotgun too short, you are now a terrorist group who is violating the NFA as a whole.
Yep.
And all of you can be charged under these kinds of criminal statutes where you guys are distributing firearms, because that's how this works in actual law.
Yeah, that's why you got to be. That's why you got to be careful. And I caution people against forming or joining militias, because even though we technically have that right, I think that it's kind of sealing your fate with the federal government, to, especially if you are white positive or talk about the white race at all. Even if you have the best of intentions, like Don said, all it takes is for them to find one little thing that they can burn you on, and then guess what? You all have a federal record, and you might go to prison for a very long time. So,
and chat brought up Ruby Ridge, which is pretty relevant, right? Because
yes.
what happened in Ruby Ridge is absolutely disgusting. They went to a guy who was poor to the point of starving, and they said, "Hey, are you willing to saw down a shotgun barrel?" And he said, "Yeah, I guess." And they said, well, will you saw it down to here? And he said, "Yeah, I guess." And because he said, "Yeah, I guess," they came to arrest him, and they came with a SWAT team, and killed his wife and kid. So understand that that's the position you're putting yourself in.
Yep. All right. That is the end of entropy responses. That is the end of paid chats. What'd you say, Kizza? Sorry, did I talk over you?
No, sorry. So I actually had myself mute because I was going to make one final point. It just reminds me of a comment that Thomas Sowell made back in 1984 when he was talking about cultures. It just reminds me of his quote, what he said about Jews and blacks. What blacks should do is basically copy the Jews, keep to ourselves, trade with ourselves, help one another climb the ladder, but in our case, don't specifically make it clear it's based on race.
I mean, good luck. You're going to deal with affirmative action laws and that sort of thing.
Well, yeah, but he meant, but not specifically in business, but just in between, kind of like what you see with other communities who do that naturally.
Yes.
I mean, again, good luck. It's going to be the moment that anyone even catches a whiff that this is what you're doing, someone will come for you. And
of course, right. That's why we say you have to be careful. If you want to do any type of white positive activism or community, don't do it with a militia. Don't do it under the old timey white nationalist stuff. That is a surefire way to get arrested or killed. Don't do that. Do positive things like I do. Build a community that actually cares about the well-being of white people, and that's what you talk about. That's what you do, because that's what matters. Not trying to create an ethno state or whatever. Like that's a surefire way to get yourself killed or arrested. Don't do that.
I was speaking in more of the economic sense. That's what I was meaning. Sorry.
Oh, okay.
If it came up incorrectly. Yeah. So like, if someone you know whose wife's got a business, go out of your way to support them, buying their products. That sort of thing.
Yes.
And I mean, look, whatever choices you make on a personal level, I mean, you'll get accused of it anyway. But that said, a lot of the problem here is that if the whole premise here comes down to that everybody else is playing racial politics and we should too, and the problem with that is once you, and we should have learned this, once you let the government start playing with racial politics, everything in the world goes bad. Everything. And it goes bad real quick.
Yeah, I mean, it reminds me of what Iconoclast said, I think it was a year or so ago, that basically identity politics is the dirty game we must play.
Therein is the thing. If you are playing identity politics in the actual political world, then this will only escalate forever, right? And the hope amongst that is that I don't know what white people somehow win. I mean, this is how you get to it becomes a white ethno state eventually, right? And this is the thing, right?
But that's how all states are. Saying ethno nationalism, that's not really any different from how nations have formed over the last thousands of years. Like when I say that, I'm not saying we need to forcibly remove everybody non-white or whatever. That's ridiculous. But what I'm saying is people naturally gravitate towards racial ethnic lines. That's how nations form. That's what a nation is. And to act like that doesn't matter to regular people, I think is big brain centrist missing the forest for the trees, because people do care about those things. They care about their countrymen and the white people around them being what their society is about. Like, I know that whites are the only ones that have some noticeable degree of out-group bias, but it's still not the majority. So I still think that it matters, because that's what's being forcibly exploited in us, like the white guilt stuff and all that. So that's why I've made a lot of what I talk about race, because I see that as a critical flaw in what's going on that I think we need to address. So that's
being as we're sitting near the presumably end of the show.
Yes.
This at some point you will have to tackle, or maybe I don't know. We'll do this again and discuss this in its entirety.
Sure, I'd love that.
Yeah. Same
is the German, Irish, Italian, the East Coast, as it were, of the United States, the northern half, at least, because as previously mentioned, the South was almost all northern British migrating there. But, Pennsylvania is almost exclusively German migration, right? That's how we got the state of Pennsylvania. And so, I mean, this is, if nations form around it and that's what matters, then, why are we subdividing and on and on and on? Like, there's a lot there that needs to be dealt with that I don't think anybody does.
I would love to do a stream where we just talk about this kind of thing, because I love your voice. I love your personality. You're a great guy to talk to about this stuff. And that's why I wanted to have you on the show. So we'll definitely do another one of these one day. It'd be great.
Sure. For sure. It's like, for me, I don't personally like to play this game.
Me either.
It seems to be a case of, well, it's basically a game of the inevitable. Because if we don't play this game, and let's say we leave it another generation, and next thing you know, we become drastically shrunk just by basic demographics. And then what?
Well, the simple reality of this is, once again, I don't care what you do in your personal life, right? But the moment that the political powers of the world start playing this game, you end up with real problems, and they don't go. I mean, either we stop them from playing this game, or they don't go away, and that's it.
Well, the only issue is, like, sorry to interrupt you, but
no, go
ahead.
In
the United Kingdom, for example, even though me, as someone who's white English, we make up, let's say, 75% of the island. Look at the capital city of London. We're under 50%, that's on the 2011 census. We look at the 2021 state. It's estimated to be around 30 to 35%.
Really, I'd make it lower.
Yeah. Well, like I said, these are estimates because they've not been released. And then there's the whole question of, this is in the UK's case, the tipping point, which is 2066. Now, I believe AA did a great reference the video on this. Do you think, if, let's say in my case, in terms of the white English, do you think when I'm a pensioner or past my death, do you honestly think people like me are going to be given the same minority privileges that the minorities had?
No, you're dealing with Islam.
Yeah, exactly.
I don't know what to tell you. You're dealing.
My thing is that the way I see it goes back to what I said earlier, is that I found the most effective method with dealing with the regressives is to use the regressives' logic against them, because you force them into a rock and a hard place, and quite often they'll naturally turn away.
Absolutely, and that's what led me to the racial language and racial activism that I'm doing, is because it's not that I originally cared about this stuff. I like white people just fine, but it's not like I wake up in the morning and be like, oh goddamn, I'm white. That sure is great. Like, it's I see how we're being attacked and what's being weaponized against us, and how it has been for a long time now. And I just think that you can't go up to a normal person or your local community and talk to them about 5 different generations of Marxism and endemic global corporatist crap, and it'll just miss them. It'll go right over their head. But if you go up to them and you start talking about things they noticeably see in the media and in their children's homework and stuff, you call it, this is anti-white. This is against Western kind. This is not good. We can't allow this. That's at least a good way to start giving people the language to talk about what our real enemies are up to. And so that's why I see value in it. And again, like Don said, there are good reasons to not militia up or make, pro-white groups and stuff, because that's how you get. That's how you get.
you can't do that regardless because reasons. But like, what kind of course. But like, I think what the main difference is, and kind of going to Don's point when it comes to America versus not just the UK, but for Europe in general, is that America is a very young country. It's a young country, whereas Europe is vastly older than it, nationally speaking. And the problem is that Europe has a very ethnically rooted identity between it, whereas the United States, technically speaking, that had a massive reset button nearly 250 years ago.
Yeah.
And also going to one of Dom's earlier points, which I forgot to counter, was in the United States, people who are working class tend to be conservative, whereas in the UK, well, most specifically England, people who are working class are nationalists, whereas the so-called conservatives tend to be posh guys who live in the countryside.
So don't take conservative to mean the political output. Working class people are conservative in lifestyle. They're not inherently agreeing with conservative politicians, right?
Right.
I meant when I say conservative, I'm meaning ultra traditionalist types. That's what I'm speaking of. I'm talking ultra traditionalists.
That might mean something a little different in the UK because we're only a couple hundred years old over here.
Because generally the term conservative means to conserve the nation in terms of its ethnic demographics, culture, society, etc. That's why I say traditionalist. Whereas the American conservative, which I've argued with Yizz about this, I'd argue the American conservative either doesn't exist technically, or you're a Native American.
That's all right. Well, apparently you have to exist for X number of years before you can say X is a good thing and we should stick with it.
Well, yeah, but like I'm just saying that from like maybe an English and European perspective versus, let's say, the American perspective. But ultimately, but like I said, that's how I see it in that sense.
All right. Well, we're going to move to the last part of the show. If there are any comments or super chats that come in from this point forward, we'll address them on the next stream. But we're going to wrap up and talk about just a couple things. First and foremost, I have been invited to do something fun tonight called Wackaroki, and I'll be sending the DLive link to this in the chat here.
Right.
In Wackaroki, it is there. It comes. It's over on White Art Collective's channel. It's where a bunch of white positive people that create art and music get together, and they invite people that they know to come sing terribly. And since I don't sing well, they're going to have me on the show tonight. So that will be at 8 p.m. Eastern time tonight. And then for those of you who are looking for white positive community stuff, we have Chuck Martell's Garage Party, which is people from the White Art Collective that make poetry and songs and stuff. On a Friday night stream. It's pre-recorded, but they do it as a premiere on YouTube where you can get together and talk and laugh and talk about the music and stuff. And then last but not least, I'm going to show one more person. For Null makes a lot of cool, not really prog rock, but like a mix of prog rock and heavy metal stuff. And he streams on both DLive and YouTube, and it's easier to link to YouTube. You'll get his DLive from that. So here at the end of the show is when I like to talk to our esteemed guest and graciously thank them for coming to chat with me and share ideas with me. Thank you so much for your mind and your experiences today, Don. Let's talk about the things that you want promoted or you want shared. What do you want me to share? Do you want me to share your Twitter or your Discord or something?
So I think you have the channel down in the description. And
I do.
If you go there, the description has everything in the world in it on basically every video. So if you click basically any video on the channel and hit the description there, I mean, there's a Twitter, there's a Parler, there's a Discord, there's a Gab. I am all over the damn place. There's a DLive. There's a BitChute channel that doesn't get maintained very well. There's probably
I hear you. Ever since YouTube stopped allowing them to do automatic uploads, man, it is such a pain because it seems like about half the time I upload something, it just straight up fails and I have to redo it. So it's been real frustrating. Yeah. But I do try to keep up my BitChute as well. Sorry. Go ahead.
Yeah, I know what you mean. It's the reason I've said lately, like anything I publish that is not the weekly streams will probably end up on BitChute because My God, that is a gigantic pain. Unrealistically so.
Yep.
Yeah.
Because not only do you have to go and download your streams, you have to download them yourself to your machine. Then you have to put them into an uploadable format that will upload to BitChute. I mean, and all that stuff takes time. And and I'm busy. I have to take care of people and make money because I don't make much money doing this. So I also have to do odd jobs and stuff. So it's tough trying to do all this.
And also, do you even have good enough internet to be able to do that efficiently?
I don't know. It takes hours for me to upload a 10-minute video. So
well, exactly. This is sorry.
Yeah, well, you know, I'm running 2-hour streams most days, right? Monday through Friday is hour and a half to 2 hours every day. And
to shill for you, by the way, they are great streams. I make sure to at least listen to most of Don's streams, even if I'm working or taking care of someone. I'm usually listening, even if I'm not in the chat. I really like Don's streams. Definitely check them out.
I definitely liked his appearance when it was him and like 7 others on what's the lady's stream? I forget his name. Something trees. The
wow, that's way back there.
No, I don't remember that. That's a while back.
Oh no, it was like Don. It was like Dom, Sargon, and like 6 others. I forget who his name. Oh damn, what's her name? It's gonna bug me because I'm pretty certain this was on Twitch. Black lady. I think she's from Texas. What the hell's her name?
Tree of Logic or something like that.
Yeah, something like that one. Yeah, Tree of Knowledge. That's the one.
I mean, we're talking like 2018, I think.
Was that 2018? Yeah. I thought it was this year. I thought it was like early in the year.
No, that's not me then. But
was it not? Oh, maybe I'm misremembering.
Somewhere way back there, I think I was on one of those streams.
My mistake. Sorry. Now I've misidentified you. That is blasphemous.
And it is, but
but yeah, I mean myself. I mean, technically I have a channel, but I don't actually upload it. But I'm hopefully going to be doing a video with All-1 tomorrow or Sunday, talking about various ideas of how to fix the West, quote unquote. And some of my ideas are pretty damn batshit insane, but there is logic behind it.
What a great.
Is that going to be on DLive? Because I can share that link for everybody.
I'm not sure. I have to double check with All-1, but
I'm pretty sure that he does those on DLive because I've been on his show before. So I'm gonna.
Yeah. Well, here's the thing is, I know he normally does on a Wednesday, but that's awkward for me. So what he was talking about was doing a pre-record with just me and him, because I know his partner's obviously busy. Well, his stream partner, should I say, not his actual spouse partner. He does, obviously he's very busy working, so he did speak about doing it with that, doing, let's say, a pre-recording on a Saturday, on Sunday, and then maybe uploading it as a stream on a Wednesday.
Okay.
Potentially, yeah.
Well, since I don't know what to link, I'm not going to. Just if you want to look up All-1, I can give All-1's YouTube link. I'll go ahead and do that.
Yeah, and hopefully after our last stream on Wednesday, hopefully I could perhaps be doing something with Scrum potentially with Dev.
That would be great. This All-1 guy, he's really nice. He's got a beautiful Southern man voice. I love talking to him. He's more the Southern mountain type, where Don's more of the educated Texan type.
Educated Texan. So
I know you're from California. I'm teasing.
If there's accent, it came from California.
Yeah, so, I know. That's why you're easy to understand and speak clear English, because people from California tend to do that.
Hey, hold on, Yizz. Have you forgotten where I'm from? I'm from the
American English. You British twat.
No. Hey, there's no such thing as British. Remember that.
No such. You English twat.
Yeah, it's twat, not twat. There's no.
I'm America. I'll say it however I want, baby.
Anyway,
we're going to go ahead and wrap it up because I need to go pee and make a drink before the cigar stream. Don, I don't know what you got going on tonight, but if you're going to be on the cigar stream, I'll be hanging out there with Kizza. Thank you all for joining us today. It was a wonderful conversation. Thank you so much, Don. I look forward to more conversations with you in the future. You are brilliant and fun and say a lot of things that I like to hear. You're definitely someone that I like to bounce ideas off of, and I like hearing what you have to say. Thank you very much. All right. Well, we will see you guys next week. Same time, same channel. Bye-bye.